videos attending a church service. Dutch prosecutors say he's been living there for at least 6 months. The 33-year-old was sentenced in absentia in June to 24 years in prison for smuggling more than 7 tons of cocaine. Russia's attacked Ukraine.
All right. Welcome to Exposing Sierra Leone. This week's live stream is, as you can see, about some of the challenges we're dealing with trafficking of drugs through West Africa. Exposing Sierra Leone is generally your weekly dive into the issues, news, and people shaping Sierra Leone and the diaspora. Each week, join us as we engage with professionals, journalists, various guests, sometimes the news, sometimes myself, and or other times with my co-host, Ed Meyer, as we explore ways to propel our country forward. And we'll have in-depth discussions about all things pertaining to the country of Sierra Leone. And in this case, we got a lot to talk about. A lot of people ask a lot of questions about why things in Sierra Leone are so expensive, right? That question comes up all the time. How come things in Sierra Leone are so expensive? People talk about the cost of imports. You know, we do have to import a lot of the products that we utilize in Sierra Leone. They come from Nigeria, they come from Europe, they come from Turkey, they come from Asia, all parts of Asia. Sometimes they even come from the United States. So that generally can explain why the cost of products are expensive. But what about real estate? As we all know, real estate pricing has a lot to do with the market. What people are willing to pay would determine the cost of real estate. So how come the average income of a Sierra Leonean is about $55 per month, but houses can cost $75,000 or $750,000 or $400,000? I've looked at houses on the beach worth $750,000 to $1 million for a 5-bedroom house in Freetown, Sierra Leone. That is more than what I can find 3 blocks away from where I am in Brooklyn, New York at this very moment. And so those questions would always come up, and I was always hesitant to explain one of the reasons. And I think because of all the news over the past 3 weeks, I think it's important that we discuss some of these things. And some of them have to do with the illicit drug trade happening through West Africa. And so let's start by acknowledging there was a synthetic drug called Kush that is in Sierra Leone pretty prevalently. We have done many conversations about it. They're conflating the word with a strand of legal cannabis you can find in the West, like in the United States and in Canada, that is different from this K2, tramadol, sometimes many other mixtures of drugs, human remains, etc. in this version of Kush in West Africa. That is one of the issues. The other issue is that West Africa happens to be a massive trafficking zone for illicit drugs that go to Europe, right? This is something that has been known by Interpol, by police all over West Africa, FBI in America, all kinds of different people, the CIA, all people are aware of this. And there are varying degrees of how they plan to solve this. Now, there are all kinds of maps that have been put together that draw up the transatlantic drug trade that is happening, which is what causes the cost of things to go up in Sierra Leone. If you got people who are iced out in the club, you know what I'm talking about. These guys have these giant chains. They just throw money around, and you'll see it a ton. And you kind of wonder, you go to Sierra Leone and you're like, you know, I thought I was doing well for myself, but my goodness, these guys, they all have the what I used to call the drug dealer uniform, right? Used to see it in the clubs when I was in New York City clubs about 15 years ago. I used to go to the club like 4 or 5 times a week, and you meet these guys who, you know, got 10 bottles at the table, all the beautiful women. These guys have, you know, big chains, the grills, all the stuff, right? And we all know what they do for a living, but it's not our business. The challenge, though, when we're looking at Sierra Leone and in West Africa in general, is how this stuff is happening in Sierra Leone and in West Africa. So let's talk about this, right? So this picture right here kind of shows you the way the trafficking of illicit substances get from Latin America. It doesn't show coming from Cuba in any way, but I mean, not Cuba, sorry, Colombia. But cocaine does obviously come through Colombia, through West Africa, and gets to Europe, right? All different areas of Europe, but it follows different paths through Africa. Now, I want to read to you kind of a little bit about the history of the drug trade across West Africa and how this has been happening. And it's kind of become an inherent part of how things are being done. And if you guys know what I'm talking about, when you go to Sierra Leone and you see these people, you know who I'm talking about. I don't know any by name. Let me be very clear. I don't know any by name. I don't know any of them individually. I'm just saying you can see it when you go. So in the 1950s and 60s, West Africa became a transit hub for global drug trafficking. Cocaine from Latin America and heroin from Afghanistan and Southeast Asia began moving through the region to Europe and the United States, facilitated by what this article considered poorly policed borders, corruption, and economic inequalities. In the 70s and 80s, Colombia emerged as a major cocaine supplier globally, with the Medellin and Cali cartels dominating the trade. Trafficking routes initially targeted the US, but European markets became increasingly important over time. Let's be very clear. Cocaine itself is a very expensive drug. How do people in Sierra Leone and Guinea, who they call it, quote unquote, flex, how do they have access to something this expensive? For example, a legal bag of cannabis, let's say it's like a gram or a gram to 2 grams, something like that, in the United States, depending on where you are, because it's legalized now, it's probably about $10, even some of the highest grade cannabis that you can find. For that same size of cocaine, that can be worth between 80, sometimes in the United States, as much as $180 to $200, $220 in Europe. So it exponentially grows in its cost, especially when you go all the way out to, like, let's say Australia, because the further away it is from the source, the more expensive it is. And it's easy to find young West African people willing to traffic it. And we would talk about some of the stories of people getting caught. It's crazy the number of articles that have been written about people getting caught. I'll get to that in a moment, but I just want to kind of get you through some of the history. So I just talked about the 70s and 80s. The early 2000s, West Africa's role in the cocaine trafficking grew significantly as traffickers sought alternative routes to Europe to avoid heightened law enforcement in traditional transit zones like the Caribbean. So countries like Sierra Leone became a key transit point due to what this article said is weak governance and corruption. 2007, the name the Cocaine Corridor became used to describe West Africa as large volumes of cocaine was transited through the region. Domestic consumption of West Africa increased, and drug profits destabilized what they consider this article considers destabilization of local governments and institutions. And so that's how you can find young people in Sierra Leone talking about they like to take flex, which is coke. And it's something that's very expensive in the United States. Generally, upper class people do a lot of cocaine because of the expense, right? The cost. But in Sierra Leone, it can be widely found because of these articles that have been written. At least it explains, these articles explain it. So from 2013 to 2019, a decline in seizures led to speculation that West Africa's role in the cocaine trafficking had diminished. However, massive seizures in 2019 revealed that the trafficking had continued covertly, with Sierra Leone remaining a significant transit hub. So in the recent years, the 2020s, Sierra Leone's port has become a primary hub for cocaine trafficking operations via maritime routes. Corruption at ports and vulnerabilities within law enforcement have facilitated this activity. Again, these are articles being written about this. I'm just reading the articles. Now that brings you to the most recent story, right? And many of the recent stories. So before I get into those stories, I wanted to just kind of share with you some of what we've been seeing being reported, because it is quite a bit of stuff that's being reported over the last few weeks. And I want to talk to you guys about a couple of stories that came up. So the first thing we'll talk about is this story here that I saw not too long ago, actually. And it was about the drug trafficking trade in Dakar. So police arrested 5 Sierra Leoneans. That was on the 18th of January in Dakar. So that was one article. You guys can read the article on Sierra Loaded. We're not going to go through that article in detail, but 5 Sierra Leoneans were arrested there. Now, this one was a big scandal because this one was fraught with a lot of misinformation, a lot of messed up details or inaccurate details. And so I do want to speak to this story specifically because I thought this was interesting. According to these reports, a Sierra Leone embassy vehicle was allegedly intercepted in Guinea with suspected cocaine. Now, why was this an international story? Number one, that vehicle is supposed to have diplomatic immunity. It is not meant to be stopped. In fact, I spoke to someone who works at the Guinea embassy. I don't know which embassy for which country, but works for the Guinea government and an embassy. And they were shocked to hear that a car that has diplomatic immunity was even stopped and searched in the first place, which leads a lot of people to believe that was why it was being used to transit these particular illicit substances. So this next article that was on the 6th of January stated that the delegation to Guinea was to investigate the embassy vehicle caught with cocaine. And this is the gentleman who is the ambassador to Guinea for Sierra Leone. And it is alleged that it was his driver and his vehicle on its way to Guinea that was stopped. And he, of course, he was implicated in this. And the question is he currently being detained? Has he been moved to Sierra Leone? That was a question on February 5th. Where is the Sierra Leone ambassador to Guinea? Has he been recalled? Has he been detained? The Sierra Leone government did say they are looking into this particular story. So again, as you can see, there's a problem here. Regardless of whether or not it's the 5 that were detained in Dakar, whether it was this vehicle that was detained in Guinea, we know that this is a problem. This is not a big problemo. This is a problem, serious problem. And what it's doing is it's putting their hands in some young folks and apparently other people all the way up the chain. I don't know how far up it goes, allegedly. And so this has apparently been allowed to happen. And the problem is, as someone who likes to represent Sierra Leone, to speak about Sierra Leone in a positive light, I don't want to do stories like this, but I can't ignore that this is something that's happening. And look, I understand that we're talking about a country where the average person makes $50 a month. And I've been spoken to many times by people on the ground that would say to me, you can't judge what people would do to make money in a country where the average person makes $50 a month. And so this is not judgment. This is just explaining the stories as they've been happening. Now, I wanted to show you guys some more because I think it's important to do a search. Sorry, they have a lot of ads. If you type in cocaine in Sierra Loaded, which is a very good website for finding out the stories that are happening in Sierra Leone, you can see 1 week ago, 3 weeks ago, 3 years ago, many stories that speak about what is happening nationally and internationally around the drug trade in Sierra Leone. So, I mean, this is 1 year ago. Suspects arrested enormous shipment of cocaine to Sierra Leone. 21-year-old Sierra Leonean student, two others arrested, cocaine trafficking to Mauritius. Sierra Leone national arrested for cocaine smuggling at Indian Airport. Guinea seizes 1.5 tons of cocaine from Sierra Leone flagship. That was 2 years ago. Sierra Leonean woman sentenced to 4 years in Seychelles prison. Brazil vessel carrying cocaine worth $150 million intercepted off the coast of Sierra Leone. I mean, look, there's so many stories. And if you're not paying attention, you wouldn't even know that these stories are happening. These things are happening. But when people ask, why is real estate so expensive in Sierra Leone? Imagine how many young people are making money from the trafficking of cocaine and being able to be flush with cash and are able to pay exorbitant amounts of money for the real estate in Sierra Leone. That's what's pushing up the prices. Partly what's pushing up the prices of real estate in Sierra Leone. And so when people ask me, I never wanted to talk about this particular issue because it was something that you hear about, people talk about it. These are underground rumblings. But now that there have been 3 major stories about this, and we're going to get to the main story, I feel like now I can talk about it publicly. I never wanted to talk about this publicly. I don't ever want to show Sierra Leone in a negative light because this is a great country that I call a second home and that I am building a house in and I have landed. You know, I really do love Sierra Leone. And so I never wanted to talk about these things publicly, but it's the truth. And well, it's alleged. It's the alleged truth. These are stories. Some people have been prosecuted. These are just news stories that I am reporting on and letting you guys know because many people don't look into this stuff. Now, Sierra Leone is still considered one of the safest countries in the world, top 10 safest country in the world. So it's not a violent drug trade necessarily. It just happens to be one that affects many people's pockets in terms of those who are looking to buy real estate in Sierra Leone. So if you're ever wondering, why does it cost so much? I'm going to go back to this being one of the reasons. Not the only reason, maybe not even the main reason, but it's definitely one of the reasons. So again, just a simple search and the stories 2 months, 3 months ago. Now, these are interesting stories. So there was a lot of questions people would ask me, right? Is, you know, who are the people perpetrating some of these businesses, right? Like, who are the people that are involved? We'll take a look. As you can see, these are not indigenous Africans. So these are the folks that are coming to Sierra Leone and building up the illicit drug trade. So some people used to wonder, like, how come I see all these people coming from Europe to Sierra Leone? People would ask me that all the time. What business do they have in Sierra Leone? And sometimes people were like, oh, they're in mining. These guys are in the mining business. These guys are in mining. I don't think they're in mining, folks. I think they're in other businesses, like this particular business. And there's a guy from Holland that we're going to talk about in just a moment, who is also a part of the illicit drug trade. And so look, this scheme in concealing 1.3 tons of cocaine within a shipment of Gari flour destined for England. So these guys, basically, Gari is like a white powdery substance. And so especially if you can mash it up and put it into a powder. And so what they did is they put coke inside of it somehow, some way, and tried to ship it to Europe. And they got caught. So some comments people are saying, Iba Safir says Africa needs waste management and manufacturing their own goods. That is true, not the topic of discussion, but that is true. Blueprint says same problem in Cote d'Ivoire or Ivory Coast. Locals are outpriced due to expats and money laundering and drug trafficking. Now, look, this was something that I suspected when I first went there in 2017 and I started looking at real estate. I was like, man, the last time I seen something like this is when people talked about certain areas of Los Angeles, and you're like, there's no way the real estate could be this expensive. And I was trying to figure it out, and I thought to myself, okay, something's up here. I see these shady characters coming into the country, doing all kinds of crazy, weird meetings at hotels, out in the open, by the way, out in the open. And I'm like, you know, that's not a world that I operate in. You know, I'm a completely above board legal person, but it doesn't mean I haven't seen things throughout my lifetime. You know, having been a person who's been to the club many times, knowing people throughout my lifetime who have done various prison stints for the things that they were into. I was never implicated in any of that because I never messed with any of that stuff. But I had heard through other people what those people were up to. And, you know, I would talk to these people like, why would you do what you were doing? And everybody does it out of desperation or their own reasons. So this particular instance I thought was interesting because just look at these 3 folks. You know, if you see these guys on a flight with you to Sierra Leone, you start wondering, like, why are these guys going to Sierra Leone? Who are these people? And so it's not who you would think it is. It's not the Sierra Leoneans. They're not the ones who are starting this process, right? Because many of the people have to have citizenship in these other locations, namely different parts of the United Kingdom and other parts of Europe, right? And so those guys can easily get visas to come to Sierra Leone, do what it is that they do, pay off a few people here and there, and then go about their business. Now, these guys were caught. And so I just wanted to call that out. A Nigerian national was remanded for cocaine possession at the Freetown airport. Now, this is the other thing. When I went through the airport, I remember the way they searched through my stuff. I'm like, man, guys, this is kind of ridiculous. And about 2 weeks before, this is December 2nd, 2024. I got there on December 9th, 2024. And I remember the way they were going through my stuff. And I'm like, what the hell is going on? Why are you guys searching my stuff in this way? And then I had done some research and I found out that somebody was caught at the airport with cocaine at the airport. And so there's so many different stories too about people swallowing pellets and getting caught. And I don't know how these people are getting caught, but that is how it gets to Europe. So guys, there are different ways that it gets to Europe, right? As I mentioned, you have this trade through boats, but then human beings, what they will do is they will swallow balloons with cocaine in them, swallow it, because your body, your stomach acid and all of the fluids in your body aren't able generally to break down a balloon, like a rubber balloon. Sometimes people even use latex gloves, like to cut out the fingers of latex gloves and stuff cocaine in them, tie it up. They swallow as many pellets as they can take. Then they fly, get on a flight and go to Europe, and they just wait for it to pass through their system. Yes. Then they dig through their own excrement to find the pellets, and then they get paid on the other end. And many folks that don't look like who you saw on screen previously are African people, are the ones that are being the drug mules to Europe to do this. And then they come to Sierra Leone in December and they're flashy and they get iced out with all the diamonds and whatnot. And that's what they're doing. All right. And so this is crazy to think that this is what's happening at the levels that it's happening. And just a few people are getting caught through the process. Like I said, I'm going to say this again. I'm going to say this publicly. I don't know any of these people personally. I am just reporting on what I am seeing in the news. I will say this again to be very clear. I do not know these people personally. I don't engage with any of this stuff. I do not take penitentiary chances. This is a conversation I have always had with everybody I've ever known. I don't take penitentiary chances because I cannot survive in jail. Okay. So I'm not going. But I think it's really important to talk about this. Like I said, I didn't want to do this, but I think it's time and we have to do this because it's all over the news. I mean, right now, if you do a search on Sierra Leone, much of what will come up is these kinds of things. We want to talk about the citizenship program. We want to talk about all the new things that people are doing in Sierra Leone around the orphanages and the NGOs and the businesses that people are building. But we also have to talk about these things because this is a real problem in Sierra Leone. And it's not something I want to sensationalize, but it's just something that has to be communicated and discussed. And people told me not to talk about this because they feel like, there are people in powerful positions that might be upset that I'm communicating this. But all I am doing is communicating what has already been written about by major publications, right? I am not implicating any individuals except for an alleged individual that I do have to talk about in a moment here. But I just had to give you guys that background. So a little bit more on the key features. So first of all, people talk about the maritime route, right? Cocaine is often transported by sea from South America to Sierra Leone before being smuggled onward to Europe. So what I showed you guys on screen was, where are we at? Let me find the screen here. What I showed you guys on screen with this route. So these are what you're seeing on screen is the route that starts in Europe in blue. These ships go down to Brazil and other parts of Latin America. Then it's these items are boarded on these ships and then make their way out to West Africa. From there, many times human beings themselves are smuggling it in their digestive tract, which is the craziest thing ever, because there have been folks who these things have burst in their stomach and they die from overdoses. And these stories, you don't hear about these poor individuals that end up dying from the smuggling of this stuff to Europe. And they also, of course, don't get the lion's share of the money. They're taking the largest risk and they make the least amount of money in this supply chain, right? The people who make the most money are the folks that are sending them on these, what I like to call dummy missions, right? Sending them, and that's not to speak to the people calling them dummies. This is a term that is used to describe when someone has someone younger do their dirty work and actually put themselves at risk. It's called a dummy mission. And so that's what they're doing with these young guys. And these guys come back to Sierra Leone, show off all the money, you know, and they live what seems to be like a lavish lifestyle, but we don't even know what kind of stuff they're putting their own selves at risk for in Europe in terms of time that they're going to end up spending in jail, potentially hurting themselves physically from these things bursting in their digestive tract. And then the fact that they have to go through the humiliating exercise of passing this through their feces and then digging through it and pulling out what is in there, rinsing it off, and then weighing it and getting paid by the individuals who forced them, who didn't force them, who employed them to go on these dummy missions. So I just think it's really important to talk about this topic. It's one of those that, like I said, I don't want to do and I didn't want to talk about. And it really, as you can see, I'm passionate about this topic because it pisses me off to hear about those who are being taken advantage of, those who need the funding and who think that there are no consequences for these actions. And for right now, most people are not getting caught. Very few people have gotten caught because, you know, if you think about it, this is the main way these drugs get to Europe and to Australia is from these routes. And so there would not be a drug trade if there wasn't for a demand in Europe and it wasn't for those people employing Africans who may have dual citizenship or who may have visas to be able to travel back and forth. These are the people who they're employing to go through with this. And it's really sad to see that, of course, most of the people who get in trouble are the young Africans that have been employed by these folks. All right, so now let's get to the story, the main story at hand, this story. So we're going to watch this video again, and then I'm going to have some commentary on the other side.
Europe's most wanted fugitives has been spotted in Sierra Leone. Jos Leijdekkers was seen in these videos attending a church service. Dutch prosecutors say he's been living there for at least 6 months. The 33-year-old was sentenced in absentia in June to 24 years in prison for smuggling more than 7 tons of cocaine.
Sentenced to 24 years in prison. And they say in absentia because he was not there locally. I guess he was in Sierra Leone. Now, couple things to talk about. Let's kind of go to the story from the beginning. There have been many stories reporting on this. Okay, before I get into that, actually, I did want to share this. A Sierra Leonean air passenger who swallowed 59 pellets of cocaine arrested at Sri Lanka's airport. That was on November 20th of 2024. 59 pellets. 59, guys. This is what it looks like on the left. You see, it's like in a balloon type pellet. Maybe it's plastic. He swallowed these and then had to pass these out through his feces. That's number 2, guys. He had to go number 2, and all of this had to come out through his body. This is crazy. So anyway, okay, we've gone through enough of those stories. Let's get back into this story of this gentleman that they talked about here. So there have been many stories about him and what he's been up to. So I want to get to some. So the original story, basically, let me just give you guys the timeline of the story, and we can look at what's on the screen here. So let's start. So January 25th, 2025, Dutch authorities announced that this guy has been living in Sierra Leone for about 6 months. On the 26th, the Sierra Leone government issued a statement saying it had not received formal communication from any country regarding this guy and his whereabouts and an arrest involving him. Sierra Leone's information ministry announced on the 27th of January there was an investigation into the media reports about his presence in the country. On the 28th of January, Sierra Leone's Inspector General of Police said that they confirmed police manhunt has been launched to arrest him. on the 6th of February, the Dutch government formally requests the extradition of this man from Sierra Leone. The latest statement from the Dutch government was made by the Minister of Justice, and he said, today, the Dutch extradition request for convicted drug criminal Leijdekkers was handed over to the authorities of Sierra Leone. I hope for swift action from the authorities and Sierra Leone, and to find them on our side of this fight against the international organized crime. The most recent statement from the Sierra Leone government was made by the information minister, as I mentioned, who reiterated that on television that the government had not received any formal communication. That was prior to the 6th. So don't know if they've been any formal communication since. Here's what complicates this particular case. Two things. Number one, there is no extradition treaty between Holland and Sierra Leone. Okay, there is no extradition treaty between Holland and Sierra Leone. So what does that mean? So I'll give you an example of something like this from the United States that many of you guys might be familiar with. So many of us are familiar with the Black Panther movement. Unfortunately, the FBI under J. Edgar Hoover deemed them a quote unquote terrorist organization. And through that, he was able to kick in the door, shoot first, ask questions last, infiltrate with drugs and all kinds of other things to basically dismantle the Black Panther Party. One person named Assata Shakur and a few other people were implicated in a death of a police officer. And she fled to Cuba. The United States and Cuba do not have an extradition treaty. So although she was on FBI's most wanted, Cuba was not obligated to send Assata Shakur back to the United States. And so most people think that she's been living in exile in Cuba since the 1970s or whenever this took place. And she's been able to live there because there's no extradition treaty between the United States and Cuba. So in this particular case, for this particular case that we're talking about here, there is no extradition treaty between Holland and Sierra Leone. So if this guy is in fact in Sierra Leone, and this is in fact the same person, he does not have to be forcibly removed from Sierra Leone to Holland. Holland authorities can decide to work with the Holland embassy in Sierra Leone and decide to send their version of the FBI to Sierra Leone, but that can cause a little bit of an international issue. But they can do that, much like the FBI went all the way to Dubai to go pick up what's his face, the hush puppy a few years back, right? The FBI in all full FBI gear kicked down the door to a luxury penthouse suite in Dubai to go get hush puppy. So the same version of that can happen. Holland's people could do that. Unlikely, from what I understand, for a number of different reasons. Number one, it is alleged that this is the same person. And I don't know if this is true, but it has been alleged that this person is engaged to the current leader of Sierra Leone's daughter. Okay? So that would complicate things greatly if this is the same person and if that is true. It's not just an extradition of an individual. We're talking about someone who may be engaged or potentially married to the daughter of the current leader of Sierra Leone. Now, that doesn't mean that if this was to be true, he was found guilty, Sierra Leone would not turn him over to Dutch authorities. But from what it looks like right now, it does not seem as though this gentleman is in any danger of being sent back to Holland. Somebody can correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know. But from what I understand, he seems to be very comfortable in Sierra Leone because he was sentenced to 24 years last year and went to a public church service and was seen on video and in pictures at a church service. Apparently, this was the New Year's church service, New Year's Day church service. I don't know how true this is, but it was a church service in 2025 or late 2024 after the individual that the Dutch have said is in Sierra Leone. We don't know if it's the same person. You guys decide, does this look like the same person to you? I don't know. You guys will have to tell me, is this the same person? So as I said, they made a formal extradition request. Of course, the government of Sierra Leone at one point about a week ago, issued reports that they did not receive official requests to find him, and that that they were unaware of his identity and the allegations. Apparently, they're saying that there's a gentleman who looks like this person who has a different name that he's going by in Sierra Leone. That is not the name he is going by. They're saying this gentleman is going by another name in Sierra Leone. I'm not going to say that name that he's potentially going by. I'm only going to speak to the stories that I know that have been reported on in terms of what the Dutch have described him as and what I'm reading. Now, one of the things that has greatly angered Sierra Leoneans, if true, if this gentleman is that gentleman, Tiwa Savage and Ira Star, two of the biggest stars from Nigeria, musicians. Tiwa Savage been around for a while, formerly signed to Maven Records. Ira Star currently signed to Maven Records, probably the biggest record label out of Nigeria. Apparently, the two of them performed at who is the president's daughter, named here, and this gentleman here, engagement party. Now, this is alleged. I do not know this to be true. I was not there. And I don't know how true this is. But according to these reports, and this is a report by Sierra Loaded, a lavish engagement party held on November 29, 2024, excuse me, for President's daughter and her partner, this gentleman here, has come under intense scrutiny. The event featured performances by two of Africa's biggest Afrobeat stars, Tiwa Savage and Ira Star, who were reportedly flown in from Nigeria on private jets. Now, the opposition party, of course, alleged that artists were each paid $100,000 each for the private gig. The appearance of such high-profile performers at the event has raised eyebrows, particularly given his quote-unquote background. Now, guys, I don't know how much of this is true. I am just reading the reports. But what this would say is not only is this stuff going in and out of Sierra Leone, what this would be implying, these articles are implying, is that these folks get to operate with impunity and move around Sierra Leone freely. I mean, going to church services, sitting near to the highest levels of power in Sierra Leonean government. Does this mean that the president knows who this guy, what this guy's background was or what he was about? How do we know? We don't know that. All I know is that what we are seeing is crazy. If this is true, this guy cannot be moving around Sierra Leone, operating with impunity like this, and just be all good. But again, they say that he goes by a different. This person you see on screen, they're saying that his name is different in Sierra Leone. Many people are trying to say he is not the same person that the Holland authorities say that they're after. I think that's up to you all to decide if that's what you believe. But this has been a topic of discussion amongst many Sierra Leoneans and on all these different forums, on Instagram, on TikTok, lives, around many different platforms. And I tried for as long as I could not to discuss this particular topic because I don't think it shines a good light on Sierra Leone and it's not helpful. But it's important to know, right? Because for those of us who are looking to buy more real estate and to build, are on our own portfolios, you start to wonder, why does it cost so much? And you see something like this, and then you say, okay, if this is true, and they can afford to pay $100,000 cash to artists like Ira Star and Tiwa Savage, then you can imagine they can pay $1 million cash for a house, because you just need 10 of those. You just did 2 of them on an engagement party. You just need 10 of them, right, to be able to purchase a house on the beach in Sierra Leone. And so, there are all kinds of questions that people have about how certain people can operate businesses that have no foot traffic, buy real estate, cash for so much money, $150,000 cash, $200,000 cash. And it doesn't mean everybody does it, right? Some people get inheritance from a family member. I know people who have $1 million life insurance policies and they're splitting up amongst 5 children, right? There are people out there who've had parents who pass on a real estate portfolio and they decide, okay, one of these houses, I'm going to take out a second mortgage or I'm going to refinance. And once I have that cash, I now have the cash that I can go spend in Africa. So there are people like that. Some people take out personal loans to buy houses. I know two different people who've taken out personal loans to buy houses. I myself just do everything I do based on cash, sometimes with the help of other people in my family. And but we got to scrounge that money together. It is not easy because we do it all cash, and you got to just make some sacrifices. Maybe I don't travel to certain places or I don't do certain things because I'm pulling the money together to make a real estate purchase. And then you have folks who operate in the illicit drug trade who are able to just throw cash around and raise the price of real estate. So I wanted to do this live stream to talk about this story. Again, this is not something I wanted to talk about, but it's something that was necessary to talk about. What I'd like to do now is play a clip. There was a conversation that was happening the other day, and they were talking about some of the things happening in Sierra Leone. I want to react to this in real time. Well, not in real time, but I want to react to this live while we listen to some of this. But I think it's interesting because you can hear what the people of Sierra Leone are talking about in this particular live stream. So listen closely.
Fine-tune something. There is no way, and no matter how we talk about Sierra Leone today, international media news don't carry them. And once international media news don't carry the discussion, we got to talk about it.
So, I realize this is partly in Creole, and for many of you, maybe you don't understand Creole. So, a lot of it was probably easy to understand, but basically he's saying if the news stations are reporting on it, we should talk about it, much like what I said.
Because that only the rope me and you. I don't care how we try for.
So when he said that they all the rope me and you, basically saying that is creating a almost like a reputation of Sierra Leoneans, right? If this is how you see Sierra Leoneans, let me tell you something. I had some friends that went to the Gambian border from Senegal. And when they got to the border of Gambia, I know 3 people that were on this trip. There was a multitude of people, but 3 people that were on this trip. And each of them told me the same thing from their personal experience. When they got to the border of Gambia, the first thing that these people said is, all you people from Sierra Leone, all you ever do is bring drugs into our country and prostitution. That was literally what they said. Disgracing these people. These people were there on a trip, literally on a trip, like just a trip around West Africa. They were going to Senegal, they were going to Gambia, but they were pulled over at the border. They had to show their papers, and they were told, all you Sierra Leoneans do is bring drugs and prostitution to our country. So when this guy talks about how this is giving a bad name to Sierra Leoneans, that's what he's talking about, right? Not only European countries and America is going to start to see Sierra Leone this way. Other West African countries are saying the same thing.
Fine-tune this thing. There is nothing like fine-tuning it. We got to talk them as it is. If the ambassador don't issue laissez-passer, all right, the laissez-passer will issue, they can catch the driver with government vehicle. And when they catch the driver, they catch her with a laissez-passer signed by the ambassador. For saying that you they send the driver to Salon and the driver go for a return come back.
Okay, so just to be very clear, I realize this is in Creole. I didn't realize, because I listened to this before and I understand Creole fluently, I kind of forgot that this could be in Creole. So for those of you who don't understand, maybe easy to catch for context clues, but just really quickly, basically what he's saying is there was a document that says this vehicle is supposed to go to Guinea and return to Sierra Leone, signed by the signed by the ambassador to Guinea, the Sierra Leonean ambassador to Guinea, who was in the ambassador's residences in Guinea at the time of this vehicle's seizure.
Are you taking advantage of the immunities where you get because you're an ambassador? If they say they need to charge the motor car?
So obviously he was just asking, you know, you have, you know, what is it called? Immunity, diplomatic immunity. So you thought they're not going to search the car? Are you taking advantage of that fact?
Make una dey use am for stain the government.
Obviously using it to stain the government, make the government look bad.
And just 1 week after, when then disgraceful citizens them, accusing them of drug na Guinea.
Also, there was a couple of citizens that were, from what I understand, that were in Guinea, Sierra Leonean citizens in Guinea, that were forcibly removed and sent back to Sierra Leone. And many people were very upset by that. And they felt like it was the Sierra Leoneans were unfairly targeted in Guinea and sent to Sierra Leone for alleged drug use and drug trafficking. And then a week later, we hear this story about the ambassador to Guinea having allegedly what seemed to be drug paraphernalia in his vehicle.
And this thing come out na do, not knowing that now top people in position, now people where they carry diplomatic position, now they misuse we country in name. Ordinary Sierra Leonean and then go load the exceeding a fish na truck. Send them kind of salon in a very disgraceful way. The ambassador Tima back, they talk to them Sierra Leonean and then at the border, they tell them, say, now the behavior okay puts other people in country, now they give them problem that how they get. Not knowing that now they do the thing.
So again, he's just going on about the problems that we have in terms of our, you know, our public relations, the way we're seen externally, not knowing that it's the people, you know, at the top that are doing this. I mean, we're talking about an ambassador. That is crazy if it's true. So again, you know, these are two different stories that we're talking about today. I talked about a couple different stories, but one, the ambassador to Guinea, his vehicle was caught. And this was a story over the last couple of weeks. And then two, this apparent person who was sentenced to 24 years in Holland is apparently engaged, maybe potentially married to the daughter of the president of Sierra Leone, and is in Sierra Leone moving around as he pleases. Now, this is alleged. All of this is alleged. Nobody has been convicted in the country of Sierra Leone. Now, a particular individual has been convicted in Holland. We presume that it's the same person you saw on video and a picture before. Internationally, people seem to think so. I can't independently verify that. I don't know the man. I don't know.
And because of them, people and they struggle where they go through. God mother answer one person in prayer day. We bring this national disgrace now where they go so at randomly. Let me come to this guy. First to start with, how that guy they enter inside the country. Now, the guy gets diplomat passport. And in the diplomatic passport, they carry a name. Where that name there, now Umar Sharif. Now the guy name now in diplomatic passport. Yeah? Who that issue the passport? Now immigration. How comes immigration issue with diplomatic passport? Any government where they're serious about this thing, if they are not there, from that moment where the information and they don't come out, they don't sack force you the head of immigration. But let me draw on our attention. There is a
okay. So now look, this guy, you know, I don't know, and I don't know, you know, if this guy, who gave him that name or who gave him the passport. I don't know if you sacked the person who gave him the passport. I don't know if that person is implicated. And I think what he's talking about is I'm thinking he's talking about this particular, is it this guy, the Holland guy? I think he's the one who got that passport under that name. I think that's what he's talking about. But anyway, let's continue listening.
A video where this guy the Fetna club. Yeah, you they see in the chief immigration officer, and then go club together. So this guy don't rub skin with top authorities in position. From there, this guy can go now the president in village and go attend service together.
Okay, yes. So apparently what they're saying is he was given a diplomatic passport. The individual in question, right? The individual in question that we've been talking about, you know, the gentleman who was on the initial thumbnail for this video. Apparently this gentleman here that you see on screen, apparently he was given a diplomatic passport with that particular with that name.
Them you know, so we're conscious of security. Any way they go get more card and get everything. For let you the second line behind President Bio in back. So God and this day you are connected. Second.
So this person seems to think that the president is connected to him. I cannot independently verify that in any way. You know, who knows? Who knows? But apparently they're saying that he is engaged to the president's daughter. This is them at the church service together.
Online at church where President Bio they attend. For let them even allow you now the domo, they must not question you first. But because when they not question the guy, now because the guy, the one we bring a guy inside the church, they are connected and they know fully well about this guy. Okay, the press release don't come out. After when the media outlet, they don't report about it internationally. Yeah? When we see the press release come out from the government, the accusation here, they say, first people don't go with the rumor, say, a married the pine picking. When the press release come out, the press release not denying that too. The press release don't make mention of any of the other accusation them about the guy. They only go straight to the point, say, well, the guy then has Sierra Leone, and if the international, if Deutschland.
So really quickly, you know, he's just saying like, look, it's too much. He's implicated. This is him. This guy seems very convinced. I can't say. I don't know. But one person said, Super Straw. Yeah, says, bruh, it's 2025. Biometrics can identify him. Technically, you're right about that. If they decide to use biometrics to identify him, right? I'm not 100% sure that is going to be the case, right? That could happen. It may happen. It's unlikely to happen, especially if this man has diplomatic immunity under a different name. And if they know him as this name, the name that was described earlier, then he may be able to live however he wants to live. And so I'm not going to play the rest of this audio now. I'll play the rest of this audio on the way out of the discussion. But I just wanted to give you guys a little bit of background as to some of the conversations that are happening. Doesn't seem there's a lot of questions today. Blueprint did say house prices are out of reach for most locals and expats due to JC pricing. I don't think it's just JC pricing. I think it's pricing of folks like what we've been talking about in terms of the illicit drug trade, right? So I wanted to give you guys a little bit of the history of the drug trade. I didn't want to just start talking about something without any background. So to show you, I did some research. And, you know, it's important to know that this has been going on since the 1950s. The illicit drug trade from, you know, from Latin America through to Europe and utilizing young people in West Africa. So, you know, this doesn't mean that everybody you see with a nice chain on and dressed, you know, looking like one, because, you know, a lot of people dress like rappers these days. You know, the dress code out in the club and everybody is to dress like a rapper. I used to dress like a rapper. Didn't have ice though. I didn't have chains. I didn't have diamonds. But yeah, I mean, this is how people dress. So you can't assume that all these people are a part of the illicit drug trade. But there is probably likely some percentage of folks that are coming in and out that are a part of it. And this proves it. I mean, you saw, I mean, was it 59 pellets I read that somebody swallowed and got caught in Sri Lanka? And there are people getting caught in Europe, all over Europe, Australia, United States, people trying to ship stuff from the United States to Sierra Leone. And when you go to any one of these ports, so like if you've ever seen a port, even in Brooklyn or something, there's a massive number of these containers that are leaving every single day, come in and out every single day. They cannot check every single one. And so what happens a lot is these folks operate their businesses through this. So Bill Nax is asking, what is JC pricing? So JC stands for just came, which speaks to like people who, like myself, I'm considered a JC sometimes because I come in and out of Sierra Leone. I wasn't born and raised in Sierra Leone. So some people are considered returnees. Some people, you call them home base. Home base would be folks who are like born and raised or spent most of their life living there. In Nigeria, they call it JJCs, Johnny Just Come. So the concept of a JC is somebody who's just coming to Sierra Leone. And many of us, you know, many folks who come to Sierra Leone save up all year, spend a lot of money, increase the prices of things because they spend a lot of money there. But there are many folks who are in and out more often, who are involved in some of these drug trades that are really increasing the prices of things. And so, yeah, so anyway, I wanted to play that for you guys, give you guys an opportunity to hear a little bit about what is going on. I'm going to leave you guys with the rest of this audio so you can hear what folks have been saying. And so that is what I'm going to play on the readout. And so check it out. You're going to hear the rest of what people are saying and why people are upset. So yeah, there it is.
Ready for go through the protocol of the Interpol for let them extradite the guy, for let the guy go back. If they want that, they're ready for cooperate for what with the international laws. Now that's then say inside the press release, but we not see any serious actions like for say the government ready for police bad name Pawi and clean we name. Where we remember, if we want to be honest to ourselves, some of una, when President Bio take governance, he saying they can clean the mess. He saying one for can clean the bad record where Sierra Leone gets internationally. Now in cleaning that bad record day, every single week Sierra Leone they make a headline na international news for waiting, not on nothing good but drug. Every week they make a headline. So on that area of saying, oh, people they share bad news, people they share this, go back to President Bio and correct them. Because the same thing what they do, so President Bio don't do it yesterday. President Bio don't team up now all international outlets where they interview him, talking about things where they go on at the APC government will not be right. If President Bio can do it, me and you get the same right for do them. If things are not going right under President Bio in government, we can criticize it. We will talk about them, and no form of law where the one for person at the parliament about counter-terrorism will stop some of us. Or for say any political intimidation or people where they hide and sell, they pretend like for say they're neutral, go able for silence people. Our President Bio been talk about issue, now so we go talk about and true not get any other name. He not get any other name, he not get wrong side. We go talk like our President Bio been talk as fellow citizen of Sierra Leone, despite in position as president. Now, so we self go talk. How some of una all day now, so today they pretend. How una be freely get the opportunity for talk, for condemn what was not right during the era of Anesbai Kuruma. Now, that same right there we all get. The same right when you get now, you buy certificate as citizen of Sierra Leone, now that same right there we get. If some of una don't want to talk about the issue, una allow people let them talk without una not knock them out, say people they share bad news. If the news is good, we will celebrate the good news. If something is not bad, we go carry up stamper. We are going to talk about it without being cautioned or without being stopped by anybody in form of intimidation.
Russia's attacked Ukraine. One of Europe's most wanted fugitives has been spotted in Sierra Leone. Jos Leijdekkers was seen in these videos attending a church service. Dutch prosecutors say he's been living there for at least 6 months. The 33-year-old was sentenced in absentia in June to 24 years in prison for smuggling more than 7 tons of cocaine. Russia's attacked Ukraine.